welcome to everyone, and ma'am as well, out back.
Thank you.
So I think before we get into it, I will address these questions individually to whom I think they're best directed to. But in the best interest of the audience, I think let's all jump in wherever we have opinions and keep it open. So we know that in India, counterfeiting is an issue across various industries, not just in health, but in healthcare. Perhaps it represents a different kind of risk where life-saving medications are being counterfeited and things like that, where the risk to society is simply much greater than in many other industries. So Rahul sir, your organization specializes in things that are very often life-saving and are the difference between life and death, and have been, especially we went through a pandemic, in those kinds of situations, Bharat Serums played, maybe reminded us of a much more important role. So maybe you can set the tone for, what is really the problems that we face in the industry, within the supply chain, who is affected and how when it comes to things like counterfeiting. What is this challenge ahead of us?
Yeah, so thank you for having me here. It's a privilege. So imagine a situation where, some of your near one is really in a hospital and need of a life-saving drug. And the person is given medicine, but the medicine really doesn't have a medicine in it, And we often think that, this is not my problem, this is somebody else's problem. But I can tell you that some of these kind of serious issues like counterfeits are fairly prevalent, not only in India, but globally, and the magnitude is very, very substantial. For example, some few years back, WHO did kind of an analysis from almost like 75 low and middle income countries based on their lab reports and the medicine testing. And they found that at a country level, almost like 10 to 15% medicines are either counterfeit or they are deficient. Now that number is quite huge, and imagine what happens, the implication of a counterfeit drug, right? Even in high income countries, that number is close to 1-2%. Now when that type of thing happens, look at the health impact of that. Same WHO, kind of in one of its reports says that because of if patients globally, there were about, kind of patients who were suffering from malaria or that for that matter, pneumonia, almost 1 lakh additional deaths occurred because those patients by something received counterfeit medicines. 1 lakh deaths, right? And I still would like to believe that that number is still underreported because a lot of, kind of those cases are not detected. But that's the kind of magnitude we are really talking about. And we have seen that, you talked about India, even in India, from all practical point of view, when we get, as a company, we have a very strong pharmacovigilance network. We get reports about, some patient safety related issues, etc. And when our team does the analysis of that situation, you would realize that often that is attributable to a kind of a fake medicine or a counterfeit. This problem I have seen, I represent international operations for Bharat Serum. I have seen that happening in, kind of Southeast Asia, that is happening in Africa, Latin America, across, that is happening across, right? So it's really a global problem to me. The implications are serious. And that's why many countries have made this as a kind of criminal offense. And there is a kind of concerted efforts which are going on worldwide against it. In some cases, even Interpol is involved in kind of curbing some of these things. So this is a serious problem to me. And I think I wish none of us sitting here or worldwide should get counterfeit medicines when they are really in dire need of medicines.
No, I appreciate the reorienting of it really being a global issue. from your experience, you've definitely seen. I have definitely seen during my time in pharmaceuticals these kinds of reports come up where it was later found that this was purely a counterfeit or spurious drug, and it's definitely a big problem, which then turns me to Anubha ma'am and Nakul sir. You're both in the business of helping us prevent these kinds of issues in society. You both have founded companies that try to deliver technology to manufacturers and other parts of the supply chain that can prevent this kind of catastrophe. So it goes to both of you. Dr. Velumani sir was telling us about the progression of technology in diagnostics. Could we have a quick dive into the progression of technologies when it comes to authentication within the pharma supply chain? Where have we come and where are we heading to? What's exciting? What might be a couple of the game changers? Nakul sir, if you want to go first.
Thanks. I think Rahul laid out very clearly. Is my mic on? Rahul laid out very clearly and very well, the problem of counterfeiting. I will just add one statistic that struck me. There was a report released by the UN that said about 500,000, 500,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa died because of substandard or fake medicines. I think it was in 2021 that the data was from. And in the equivalent year, I looked up WHO statistics. The number of people that died from COVID was 280,000. Now you think about how seriously and rightly so the world took COVID. And what are we doing about this problem, I think, is something to think about. But I'll address the question that you asked. In 2011, the Indian government, I'm very proud to say, was one of the pioneers in terms of protecting the exports going out from India through the use of barcoding or serialization, as it's called in the industry. Essentially putting a unique code on each medicine that is exported from India so that it can be identified as having come from India, and so that the government can actually track the exports a little better and assure basically the world, with the pharmacy to the world, assure the countries that we're exporting to that we are taking this seriously and we are implementing solutions. We were one of the pioneers. Unfortunately, due to various reasons, it took until 2023 for us to start protecting our own patients. But I'm not quite as good as Dr. Velumani, but what do they say? Derai, but drustai, right? So from August 1st, 2023, the top 300 brands by sales in India, and many of those, I guarantee you, if you go back to your homes, you will have at least one of these medicines somewhere in the house. We have QR codes that can be used to verify that the medicine that you're buying is genuine and to get some additional information about the product. So technology is kind of coming to help protect people. Right now it's the top 300 brands. I'm sure it will be expanded in the coming years. This can also be tied into the technologies that we all know very well, like blockchain to secure the supply chain. AI can be used to detect anomalies in terms of some of the distribution. There can be some other physical features that are already there that can be kind of tied in to the package. There are different kinds of technologies, even at the nanoparticle. Even I was talking to a company at the quantum level. I don't know how they do it. Maybe it's more of a marketing thing, but at the quantum level is what they say that can be used to kind of protect packages. So there are various technologies available, and I'm quite sure that with the right regulations and with the right kind of adoption of technology, that we are going to be able to make inroads into this deadly problem in the coming years.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, we'll hear from you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, first of all, Business World, to give this stage and to invite me. Now, coming back, and I'll start again with the scale of the problem. There are some reports which do suggest that counterfeiting industry is around $200 billion in industry. So that is the kind of scale we are looking at. Now coming back on to the regulatory compliances, and especially if we say it in pharma supply chain, it's all about visibility, control, and for public good. Yeah. So now coming back, what technology solutions are considered by the industry? If we say serialization, or it is also known as track and trace, traceability, L4, it has become the foundation. It basically gives a unique ID to each individual product item. And what we see is the technologies are available, the ecosystem are available now. For example, like blockchain, which can give that inherent trustworthiness or immutability to the data. So even the creator of the data cannot change that particular data. Coming back to AI, as we say, it can actually, what I see, the immediate use case, which actually it can help in supply chain, whether it's pharma or outside pharmaceutical domain, predictive analytics, just-in-time inventory management. That's where AI can come in. Cloud technologies, I would say that is really helping, which can help give a network effect, the interconnectivity, because supply chain has diverse, stakeholders across the globe. So cloud technologies with SaaS-based pay-as-you-go models, it can actually reach to SMEs as well. And then IoT, when it will be commoditized, I can just say it will give us a real-time, tracking of the system.
Thank you so much. You rightly, I think, pointed out that it's an ecosystem of stakeholders. You can't solve the problem by just entering any one part of the chain, as is often the case with a mature and sophisticated supply chain like pharma. So Rahul sir, as a manufacturer and as a marketer, someone directly in the chain, during my time, for example, in pharmaceuticals, what I would hear is that this, outside of all the technological advancements that a manufacturer has at their disposal, which is, provided that they can afford it, they can execute it in most cases. Outside of that, there is, in counterfeiting specifically, there is a criminal activity involved, which is the business of the lawmakers, the government, those kinds of bodies where really a manufacturer cannot play a role. And that often was the complaint that used to come up, that, we could do all these things, but if someone figures out a way to, shove a product into that chain somewhere and they have bad actors on their side, then in that short period of time, there's very little that the manufacturer can do. So what kind of support do you think that different actors in the supply chain, whether it be manufacturers, it be retailers, it be stockists and distributors, what kind of support do you think can be given, and from whom, in order for it to be truly an ecosystem-wide effort that people are collaborating on and they're not left out to dry one way or another?
Yeah, so no, I agree that this is a big problem to tackle. This is not an easy problem to tackle, first of all. Second is no one single entity like a manufacturer or kind of HCPs or hospitals for that matter, or even patient bodies can kind of address that on their own in isolation. So there has to be a kind of a joint or collaborative effort. I would tell you one example, how we did that, and that would give you the idea. And I'm talking about something which happened in one of our markets, say in Philippines, right? One of our anti-rabies medicine, we were constantly getting complaints about the product quality, etc. And when we investigated, we really found that it is because of the spurious medicines which were getting imported in the country and were, distributed. And that's the time, I think, we activated all the possible channels there. And first and most important channel in this is the regulatory body. You have to activate the regulatory body first because it is related to the patient safety, right? So basis our investigation on the batch numbers, etc., which were involved, and we had a clear evidence that these were not the batch numbers which were manufactured by us. The first, stakeholder there is a regulatory body, and we involved them. Second is important piece there is, I would say, the law enforcement agencies. You have to involve law enforcement agencies because it's a criminal offense, right? And hence I think that is the second stakeholder we activated. And it went on to the extent that with the help of local police, etc., there were raids made on certain warehouses, etc. There were some online, kind of channels through which these medicines were being sold, and all of those were blocked. And many cases they were actually went ahead and did the raids. Third important stakeholder in that whole thing is, kind of your HCP and that whole community. Creating awareness about the spurious medicines, counterfeits, letting them know that it is happening on particular aspects, in particular areas, in particular products, in particular, disease areas. And we had to really, and thanks to our team there, we had to actually conduct a lot of, kind of seminars involving multiple stakeholders to really talk about this at a different level. And of course, then your other important stakeholder, and when I'm talking only from our point of view, is your own employees and your pharmacovigilance team, which is really kind of extremely vigilant about where are we kind of seeing these type of complaints coming from. And you would see many times there are certain geographical pockets you will start getting this type of complaints, and you have to be extremely vigilant about these things. Sometimes they could be of genuine thing, but more often than less, I've seen that it has been attributed to this type of things. So all 4-5 stakeholders and channels one need to activate to address this, and to a large extent we are able to kind of give a good counter push to what we saw as a problem. But as I said, I mean, this is one of the initiative by one of the companies for one of the product in one of the country. I mean, look at the magnitude we are really talking about, and hence I think it is important that the broader set of people and the community and kind of all of these stakeholders need to be aware and kind of be taking actions against it.
Thank you. Very well put. Anubha ma'am, I have a bit of a selfish question for you. I'm just going to slide my own experience in there. So I run a company where we make consumer healthcare products, right? They're not prescription drugs, but they are meant to help you with certain conditions. But as entrepreneurs, we're sort of intrinsically optimistic. We're working on how to make the product have IP, make the product difficult to make the product hard to replicate. But we really at the get-go, at those early stages, we pay no mind to something like counterfeiting or preventing down the line these kinds of issues. We think of that as an at-scale problem. If my brand is not big enough, then it's not my problem. I'll only get to that when I sort of have people who are trying to emulate me and get away with that. So how can young companies, startup founders, there's a room full of them here, how can they bring that mindset into their products from day one rather than that be something that they consider way down the line?
Okay. I'll first start answering that counterfeiting is just not about fake goods. They can actually even say diversion. Your product is diverted to another market where it is not supposed to be there. So this is again an additional this thing. And when you are starting up a company, the last thing you would like to have is the kind of reputational risk. So when this kind of technology or the kind of serialization or track and trace system, or when the technologies are in hand, I would rather suggest the first thing every startup should be looking at, rather than taking it as a cost, they should be looking at that it will actually mitigate their reputational risk. Having said that, as I said, that we have cloud technologies. And for SMEs and for micro and small, medium-sized players, we can come up with a model like pay as you go. So you don't need upfront capex to invest in. So that's the kind of mindset we really need to change. Don't look at it as a cost. Look at it as an investment where you'll get a return here. Especially in serialization, you will get to know if there is a full traceability or a full visibility of your supply chain. You can have just-in-time inventory management, which will again reduce your cost. Basically, and it will make you an efficient, actually, kind of a manufacturer if you are looking from a manufacturing point of view. So you use the technologies which are in hand. The ecosystem is there. A couple of years back, they weren't there. And I think 2017, 2018, when we saw AI, cloud, and blockchain coming into picture, utilize that. And we don't need a lot of investment to go for it. And there are players, quite a few players in serialization who can come up with some kind of a business model for startups as well.
So I'll just take a minute, and I think Anubha raised a very important point about this parallel export of medicines. Now, many times these are not spurious medicines. These are exported to countries and regions where they are not supposed to be, kind of thing. And the real problem, I think I completely agree with her that it's a reputational risk, because these are your medicines under your brand, which are being sold in country where they are not meant to be. Now, what is the risk? The risk is really, now imagine some of the cold chain products, they need to be maintained in a tight, kind of temperature range. What is the guarantee they are maintained in that way? And when the medicines are not maintained in that way, they lose their efficacy. They become spurious because they are not maintained in that way. And this is again a big problem actually, this whole parallel export which happens from, kind of countries which are very strong manufacturing hubs. And I'm saying, India is also one of such country, China is another such country, that a lot of parallel export happens, and it really has, no control on the supply chain, which causes the, kind of medicines losing their potency and really causing, kind of health hazard.
No, those are great points. I think the investment rather than expense approach, it speaks to youngsters today also, because we are a generation that values brand reputation. I think fairly early on that maturity has sort of hit young entrepreneurs, at least in India. That's always being discussed, that I don't want the wrong idea. So I know my colleagues are watching from home, so take note, Team ErasaVir. But before we close out the discussion, Nakul sir, I want to ask, everybody here is involved in healthcare in one form or another, but perhaps the real common denominator for all of us is that at some point or the other, we're all patients, and we're the consumers of these end products, right? So consumers always have a role in accelerating any kind of change towards social good. So what can we do as the average person who goes and buys some medicines and uses those on a daily basis? What can we do in that role to try and accelerate the progress of all kinds of technology, whether it be in track and trace or whether it be something we haven't even heard of? What can we do as consumers for the cause?
I think that's a very important point. Through the association that I chair, the Authentication Solution Providers Association, we did a study in partnership with CRISIL earlier this year, and what we found was that 89% of consumers are aware that there are counterfeits in the market. This was a cross-sector study, but we also drilled down into a few sectors, including pharma. 89% are aware that there are counterfeits in the market, but 30% willingly, knowing that there are counterfeits, are buying them. So that's the first thing that I think we need to do. Now, granted, most of these consumers, when asked, are you willingly buying fake medicines? Obviously, most of them thankfully said no. But in some other sectors, people are willingly buying. So I think as consumers, we need to understand that buying a fake product, whatever it might be, it's not just harmless. It is something that is impacting. It could have harmful chemicals that will impact you in medicines. Certainly, that is a serious risk that you must consider, even if it is OTC products. Secondly, even if there's no kind of medical harm, there is harm that's happening to the economy. The government of India loses, I think, lakhs of crores in terms of, lost taxes. And that is going towards kind of building up our economy. So by buying counterfeits, we are kind of contributing to the problem. So we need to be aware that it is not harmless. There is harm that is happening to ourselves and potentially to the country. Secondly, we must kind of know our rights. I mean, we have to get a bill when we buy a medicine. It has to have the batch number on it. We should be able to look at it. We should be able to see the expiry date. If you cannot see the expiry date, that is a problem. And certainly, where there are kind of problems, you must report it back to the company or to the drug regulator. I mean, there are kind of channels available. Obviously, Ministry of Consumer Affairs is always there to listen to consumers. And lastly, when the government does implement regulations, like I said, the QR coding, please, I hope everyone will be aware of this. And I guarantee you, amongst the medicines that you commonly use, at least one is going to be in the top 300, and you'll start seeing the QR codes on them. Scan them, use them. The government is taking an initiative. We must kind of use it, because these kinds of systems, the more you use it, the more data it will generate, and the greater insights and the more the protection that the government will be able to give you and manufacturers will be able to give you in order to stamp out the problem. So that's my earnest wish for consumers, and hopefully we'll all kind of tackle this together.
I think that that's a great note to end on. Unless anyone has any concluding remarks, we got a little tip as to what we can do as the immediate next step as consumers. And I personally look forward to being able to scan lots of QRs and see what's on the other end of that. So thank you to all the panelists for your opinions, your expertise, much appreciated. And we look forward to much more of this tech in our supply chains very, very soon.